So Monday, June 13th, I propose we don't have a chairs meeting. So I know that breaks everybody's heart. Yeah, Sherry.
If you can't get a hold of me, you can get a hold of Jody Sias. And I don't know what's your phone number.
My phone number is, I'm Jody, by the way, council. How are you guys? My phone number is 406-833-0391. Yeah, you guys can get hold of me if you need to.
My phones don't work and sometimes I'm out of service a lot.
Well, I know, I use that excuse a lot too.
All right.
No,
thank
we
you.
answer our phones around here, Sherry. No. I do. I try to. Let's see, guys. Yeah, June 13th is the first day of the Mission Mountain Trail Crew. That's when they get them all together. It's a bigger crew this year. Last year I spoke to them when they started kind of a welcome, you know, as representing the tribes. And I have to go speak to a Forest Service group that morning. So I had promised Miranda at Education Department, who coordinates it, that I would be there, and then realized I double booked myself. So if there was another council member that would want to go over and meet our tribal youth crew, you know, they're going to go over the Swan field trip we went to. They're going to go work on that piece of property. They work on trails. They work at the bison range. They go all over, but they spend time on the Forest Service landscape too. So they know our Aboriginal territory and the Swan and the east side of the Mission Range. So really good crew of kids, and they like to know a little bit more about tribal government, or, you know, or supporting them. And so that's the scoop. Oh, did you? And so Miranda would know the time on that morning of June 13th. So I mean, everybody could, the more the merrier actually, to be there. I just won't be able to make it. So if you can make it this time, Mike, for sure, at least one person, I'll pass that name on to Miranda. Okay, thank you.
Are they scheduled to maintain the trail system in the Mission Mountains?
They work on some of the trails. It's not all just trail work. It's they do conservation work. They can go work on a project. They can go just learn something too. It's a combination of work experience and education. And so one of the things is to trick them into wanting to be a resource professional. Yeah, get them excited about that.
Good to see those groups are getting back together.
Yeah. So it's actually funded by the National Forest Foundation. A little bit of our money, a little bit of the National Forest funding. So
good to hear.
Mr. Chair, barring any appointments for my dad, I'll go.
okay, I'll mention Martin and Mike. Thank you, sir. Okay, Craig, you're up. Craig Barfoot, fisheries professional extraordinaire. Oh boy, I need lots of IT.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council.
Good morning, Craig.
I expected some of the rest of the gang here, but I don't know if they're going to join remotely. But I'll get into it. So I'm here to brief the council this morning, especially on one of the compact related projects on the North Fork Chaco River, and I'm seeking some council input. We're at a point on that particular project, and a big one, and I'll give you a little overview here shortly, where we're choosing a preferred alternative to develop it into final engineering, and that'll serve as my introduction. So for those of you who aren't familiar, so this is the Tabor diversion way at the top of the North Fork Jocko. And basically at that point, the irrigation project manages water that's coming all the way from the Placid Divide down the Middle Fork from Jocko Lakes across into the North Fork, and then they're diverting North Fork water too for a total combined amount of 450 CFS. So it's a really big diversion. It's the only diversion on the project in critical bull trout habitat that is unscreened, nor is there a fish ladder there. And there's about 1.5 miles of bull trout habitat. There's the rest of the gang, some of them.
Good morning, Seth.
So I'll kick this off, Seth.
Yes,
Maybe you
please
can
do.
bump in, and then we're gonna just give an overview of some of the other projects that are ongoing, but we're gonna emphasize this one up front. So anyway, this is a big diversion. It's something on the order of 100 years old. It's failing. It's in poor condition. And it really affects the entirety of the North Fork Jocko River downstream, not only in how water is managed here, but it stores sediment. And upstream during this.
Not me.
During the season of diversion, sediment is stored, and then once they shut down the structure at the end of the diversion season, when they're at in-stream flow or near it, we get this large pulse of sediment that just dumps onto the North Fork Jocko River downstream and address that. And then, so the engineers developed a suite of alternatives, and we looked at just replacing the structure at the existing location in kind, and all of the three alternatives really that are viable in the end would improve sediment management at the location. That was just something that was required as part of the project. We had to have improved sediment management so we wouldn't be negatively affecting downstream conditions so strongly. And then the other two alternatives both have fish protection in them. And they both have screens that would screen the maximum 450 CFS, keep bull trout and cutthroat trout from being entrained and going down the canal. And one of them, though, the fish passage, upstream fish passage alternative, which is a ladder, we think is minimally viable. And that would be an alternative where they replace the structure at the location, and it would have a 116-foot long fish ladder, which we think for bull trout would be a real challenge. We got an upside down slide for you. The preferred alternative is one that would.
It's upside down.
I don't know why that occurred. I don't know if there's a way to switch that, council. Okay.
Go ahead, Len.
In regards to the scope of work on the project. So right there at the pond where all the sediment builds up right there. And at some point in time, are we going to remove all that sediment during this project?
We would, that would become, I'm sorry, I was late. Craig introduced this, but I mean, the heartland is we have a preferred alternative for engineering and fisheries, and the site would become, it would look a lot different. It's an important place in the mountains for the tribal members. And so we're trying to understand how far we can change it is really what we're about. And that site would become a fairly major construction site for a season or more. We would remove and change the river there, remove all that sediment there. Yeah, and remove the concrete dam entirely.
All right.
Yeah, is the plan. And so
So yeah, there's a lot of accumulated sediment. So the preferred alternative here from the technical team standpoint, the way we can write that, yes, kind of look like, oh, man,
Yeah,
now we're back.
you just click that twice.
Yeah. So I've got my order of slides messed up here. This is the existing condition, council, as we go through. And this is a rock ramp diversion structure. So it's kind of intended to be more naturalized with roughness. The fish would be able to pass right up through that in a low flow channel. And then that would be the equivalent of the ladder here, but it would be right in the diversion. And we're working on a similar one at the lower J canal.
So the rock ramp here would be longer than the picture. We just didn't have a good example. But the idea is if you go upstream of that dam where the sediment between there and the bridge about halfway, we would construct a concrete bedded rock dam. So when you look at it at the end of the day, it's checking water up for the canal, but it looks like a natural feature. We would sort of blend it in. So that's the dam element of it. It would have to drop a bunch. It would be about 120 feet long in this case, but it would be a gradual, it would look like a field of boulders, and it would pass fish up and downstream. It would pass the wood, the large logs, and it would pass the sediment across that structure. So that we're trying to find a way to check water up, which is the perennial problem in irrigation, and do it in a natural way. And as Craig said, we're doing this at the lower J canal by Ravala, and that's a much simpler site. So we haven't really brought that that sort of decision to you. But that's what the rock check dam, and it's a viable solution. We're confident of the engineering capabilities of it. It's just that.
So rather than just a dam that as exists now, it would be longer and provide passage, like Seth said, and hopefully look more natural, but it would be a larger structure than the existing structure.
Yeah.
And the fish screens here, in order to screen that large volume of water, we had to do them separate and divert part of the water up high. That's the picture on your screen. And then divert an additional amount and pass it over the second fish screen. Each of those would need to be roughly 200 feet long by about 30 feet wide, if I think I'm
A little shorter.
So
Yeah.
with there's some structures in front that are needed to stabilize the flow and train it into the fish screen. So the total length, including the concrete structures in front, would be roughly 180 to 200 feet, I think. So, and that is the part where we're seeking council input. It would increase the footprint at this location to provide fish screening. The technical team, this is the preferred alternative, but it would increase the footprint.
Before you leave that picture, Craig, so we have to get, so the Tabor feeder canal takes 400, it feeds Tabor Reservoir, so it's a huge canal. And to make the screens work, we have to split them into two because we can't get it all in one. One of them would actually be in the bed of the canal below the dam, right where it starts up there. So that one would sort of fit the landscape. The other one is on that bend where the large cut slope is. And we have a picture, that's the one that's going to be more visual. It'll be right at the rock ramp. And then we'll have gates and, canal gates right in there. I think that's the one that's going to be a little bit of a change of footprint. And I think our next slide shows a picture of what these creatures look like.
At this location, everything's kind of squeezed in against that hill slope, the canal road, the canal, and all the access. So this is a site that is an example of what would these screens and their concrete that is needed, the structure for the screen base would look like. This is in Sisters, Oregon on the right here. And this one is actually, I think, just a little bit longer than the one that would be proposed, but very similar. So it's kind of narrow, long, linear. Maybe one would be in the canal, as Seth said, the other would be kind of expanding the existing footprint that's up there now to provide the fish screens.
So they're just long rectangular concrete channels. And they're about 200 feet long. And then what you don't see is a screen at the bottom. The water just falls through the screen, and they work very well. And we think it would work quite well at this site. It's just, again, that, but in addition to this work, we plan to do, we're going to rebuild the bridge upstream of the dam for those, it's kind of going downhill, and we're going to rebuild that. We're also going to, with Tabby Espinoza's program, try to reclaim the cut slopes there that have eroded away and just get some natural plant growth on them. And then we do things to, we could use the word restore. We're going to tune up the channel where the dam was and naturalize it and get it looking like a natural channel. So the big question, and then there'd be box, we don't need to go into the details of the engineering. There'd be buried box culverts to carry water from one screen to the next and things like that. But it's really the screen, which Craig, you talked about why you want to do it, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. To gain that extra habitat and just to place it in that site. And then, I mean, there are things we could look at, whether they're appropriate or not, like stamped concrete or what you see at the Polson Hill, what the highway department did. I mean, those add significant costs. And I think this concrete would sort of blend over time, but
yeah. So, and this was in the Flathead Irrigation Project's biological opinion was to evaluate loss of bull trout down the canal here and see if something can be done to address it. So it is at critical habitat. The Fish and Wildlife Service would have to weigh in on this, obviously. If we were not to screen here, they may want off-site mitigation. We're uncertain how they would weigh in. But it would gain about 1.5 miles of high-quality bull trout habitat and then several miles of cutthroat trout above the wilderness boundary. There's a barrier falls that prevents bull trout there from being above there, but they're cutthroat trout for many miles. And so this would keep them in the system too as they come down. This system diverts the bulk of flow during some times of the year. So it's a good assumption that it's also diverting most of the fish that are coming downstream. So
this was also when your tribal legal technical team for a period of years was coming into the council and saying, what are your rehabilitation and betterment priorities? When former Chairman Trahan and Durgalo, we would come in, and this was the #1 priority for the council at that time. And it's actually embedded in one of the appendices as the #1 tribal priority.
So there's a big intersection here, a lot of things going on, but we'd like to hear council's input on, we know that the fish protection structures are going to expand the footprint here a bit. That's just the reality of it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Knowing the site very well, it's a heavily altered site as it is. So human footprint is very heavy right there. So yeah, I mean, we have the funding, we can do something good for our native trout species. And I think your strong recommendation for the fisheries preference is one that I would certainly support myself.
Okay.
The only question I have is, and I know that Tabitha is going to do, is the more vegetation you can insert in there that's allowable with the operation of the project without causing piping or other details, that would be very beneficial. So I like the vegetation versus the more heavy-handed structural concrete that's aesthetically pleasing. The easy stuff, of course, is just to do a wash finish on some of your concrete, so it has more of an aggregate finish to it. That's a cheap thing to do, but a lot of concrete ends up looking that way.
Yeah.
You can expedite it.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments from council? Mike?
Well, I definitely support the fish in this preferred alternative, definitely. I'm not afraid of a human footprint when it's done right.
Yeah, it's not exactly, the site is not a recreation site per se, never has been. So it's gonna be a drive-by. I think people will be intrigued by it. I think they'll be happy to see that our cutthroat and bull trout aren't going down the ditch, you know? We're providing for habitat, so I think it'll be really interesting to see it constructed.
That is ultimately how the ID team, their thinking evolved, is that we were going for functionality and to do something good for the fisheries. And
Taco, we will refurbish the concrete section of canal, like the bridge above there. The bridge would probably be an early effort because we need to get equipment through there. And then, just to give you a holistic perspective, then we would also probably have to, from the North Fork to the Middle Fork, you know, the giant larch that are there, we'd have to at least improve the running road surface so vehicles can get up there. So we'd have to get the North Fork, the reason Craig and we wanted to come is we're moving the consultant from this preliminary engineering to final design, and that's a big step. And so to get the North Fork to construction is a few years away, but Jay Smith would like to start Falls Creek within a year. We have to get the final permits in place, but that one is kind of launching. And then, so that's kind of so it's going to be kind of a disturbed area for a period of time, starting with the bridge in Falls Creek, a little bit of road work, and then the canals, and then the structure. Yeah.
The added lining you're gonna do, is that gonna make it difficult for wildlife to escape when they get in the canal?
We're working with Whisper and Carrie and learning more about that, and we want to actually build I forget the word, walkouts, basically. We want to build, we did that on K Canal. We did it for cows, unfortunately, but we'd like to play, it's hard on the Tabor feeder because it's, but we'd like to place wildlife outs, basically. And so that will be part of that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
so we did have a broader overview of some of the projects, but we've kind of taken our time.
Would you like us to just give you like a 5-minute update on the other rehab and betterment? Would you? Can you
I'll
scroll
let you
down?
roll with that. So
I just can't. So my wife and I got our ancient old legs up to Lost Sheep Lake this weekend. So, and
Snowshoes?
what?
Do you have skis?
We were able to walk on top of the snow. There was
Oh,
8 feet
crusty.
of snow at the lake.
Cool.
So I think you guys will see a lot of runoff yet. So that was really cool. But Jocko K Canal Headworks will go to construction in August of this year. And I just sent out a letter this morning. There's a group of retired, so Jocko K Canal Headworks is right in the canyon there. All retirees seem to live around it, and they're calling me and saying, what's up? So I just offered them a informal public meeting at the Arley Community Center on June 9th at 3:30 with the construction company, just to, hey, let's try to address problems before problems occur.
Just one question, Seth. I know the professor that lived up there passed away. Who owns his property now?
I don't know who has his property, actually. He just recently passed away.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so
Whitson.
that would be a good one to knock on the door, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't catch who that was, Mr. Chairman.
The geology professor
Oh,
up in the
yes.
canyon. Yeah. Maybe you could visit with Lynn on that one.
I visited with the neighbor,
Okay.
and they intend to keep it for a while, from what I've heard, and there may be a conservation easement on that. I'm not sure.
I think there is a conservation easement on it, but
Yeah.
nice piece for the tribes to acquire.
So Falls Creek diversion, we kind of gave you the lowdown there. We're going through NEPA and biological ESA consultation right now. It's basically 95% design. the Valley View shoot is a project out in Valley View, and that's designed, and we're trying to get it to construction. Jay Smith is working on that one. So we are running, I don't know if it's been brought to your attention, but we had planned to go to a conversion of the Jocko canals to pipes on the north side of the Jocko River. And we're in design on that. We had to seek a jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers for Clean Water Act 404 permitting. Their initial assessment is that that entire area are what they call waters of the United States, and we have to mitigate the canal to pipeline conversions. So that's a huge issue. While we want, I know it's in the tribe's desires to purchase or mitigate wetlands to offset these things, but 59,000 feet of stream bank would cost tens of millions. And so we have our legal team, Dan Decker's assigned 2 attorneys to work with us, and we're going to have a field trip on May 25th with the Corps of Engineers. We're trying to navigate this sort of new issue where they determine that canals are a canal to pipeline is a jurisdictional water of the United States, requiring a permit and then requiring mitigation. It implicates our whole planning effort because we want to put a lot of canals in pipe.
I didn't
And
even know
so-
there was a rule related to that.
Well, they just in this June of 2021, they overturned the Trump era Clean Water Act rules on what's a water of the United States, went back to a more environmentally liberal perspective, what they call the 2015 perspective. If we had filed our application before June of 2021, we'd have had 0 mitigation requirement, but this is where we're at. And so we're kind of in a rapid learning mode here. And we had that's why I was late. We had a team meeting on that. And then we've got the Corps coming out and we're trying to understand that. And so the issue is, can we reduce the number of canal length, or can we have our attorneys work at a more federal level to sort of get some, the settlement is mitigating as it is. So can we at a more strategic policy political level navigate the Corps of Engineers, which my gut tells me the Corps is not a very navigable group of people, but we're working on that. So that's where the Jocko pipeline project is. These are tricky things. Lower J is in midway through design. Permitting will initiate soon, and we plan to do a lot of mitigation around that site to try to naturalize it. We're going to try to replant the old Johnson hayfield and do some things on the Jocko River there to improve fishery conditions and just just make it feel like a more natural site. North Fork Jocko we described. Jocko Upper Escanal Fish Ladder, Craig has talked about. That's where he would like to have a new fish ladder there, and that'll be sort of bundled with the North Fork Jocko project. And then Mission Dam and other sod projects. So Kicking Horse Reservoir is the upcoming Safety of Dams project, and that's in design with the Bureau of Reclamation. Greg Wilson is hoping to go to construction in 2024 with that. That'll be a great job pipeline, but that's probably, he was hoping 2023 to give you a sense of supply constraints. The pipe suppliers won't guarantee that they can deliver pipe by 2023. So that's been pushed back a year. We also have to do mitigation there because they are under the tribal Kerr mitigation program. So we're working through that. We have a field trip. We're trying to get, Greg is trying to get early scoping, which the Safety of Dams program maybe did, maybe didn't do as well as they wanted to do. And so he's planning to reconstruct Mission Reservoir, which a lot of tribal member and public use up there. So we're going to have a field trip up there in a week or two and try to understand the universe of issues there.
If I might add on that
Yeah.
one, Seth, that's one where we would evaluate whether or not we can restore bull trout as part of that project into Mission Reservoir. So we're looking at that, and we'll be evaluating upstream and what species exist where in August of this year.
So the Charlotte planning areas are really, we're talking about the 30,000 irrigated area, acre area in Charlotte. And we kicked that project off recently. Chairman McDonald came to our opening meeting. We had a 2-day technical meeting. We also had a public meeting at the Charlotte Senior Center. And I'm guessing 60 irrigators showed up to that meeting. We had to dance for several hours there, and they, they came in angry. They didn't, they probably left angry, but they didn't, anyway, we navigated that meeting. It was quite a crowd actually. So, so that project is launching, and we're, next week, we're going to do a full field trip for the week with our engineering team, but we're also bringing Art Sokola out, and we're trying to understand all of the wetland issues. 16% of the area is dedicated to wetlands, whether it be Fish and Wildlife Service, tribal, or Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And so we're trying also to understand completely the wetland issues there. So that's a project that's just getting going. We're trying to plan at big levels because we have to move saved water back to the stream networks. And then a call I just took this morning, which I think is a positive, and I think it reflects something the tribal council has told us, is I've been interacting with Tom Tanner down in Arlee, who's the iron worker rep, and great guy, and gets things done. And so Tom has a concept for a training regimen for tribal folks to train them on things that we need in the settlement, not just iron worker, but maybe carpentry, maybe equipment operator, maybe restoration planner. So we talked a couple months ago. He said, give me some time. I'll put it in the blender and see what comes out. And so we're going to meet next week and with Melinda at IPO and try to understand what it would mean to create a union sponsored training program it's early days, but I know you're watching that issue closely. So Tom has got some ideas, and we'll meet later next week and see where that might lead. But yeah, that just came to be.
That's
today.
really good. That's
Yeah.
cool.
That would be especially because they have the organizational skill set to, offer something like that, whereas we would be
They do.
creating it from nothing. Yeah.
That'd be on the job training then, more likely, in
I
the
don't-
apprentice program.
Tom, I don't know what it would be.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to sort that out. Yeah.
Okay.
How we'd broadcast it to the tribal community and all that. I don't know.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Seth, is that an endeavor that we would be able to use compact funding to implement?
I think we could, for example, sponsor scholarships and things or offsets for trainees. I would guess the answer is yes to that, because it's what we call Section 8 of the settlement, which is compact implementation. Yeah, so that's probably a good question to ask the legal department, but my first blush is that would be a very appropriate thing to do. Yeah.
I would think so too. The more you can develop your local workforce, the more
Yeah.
success we would have, or we keep everything local.
Yeah, so I think, it's just brand new to, Tom just called this morning, so, but we'll see where it goes. Yeah. That's kind of the bucket list. We have one project we'd like to start later this fall. I don't know, it's probably premature to talk about it, but we'd like to get into the Mill Creek, Camas A Canal area, kind of distribute, and we had a meeting at the Kootenai Center, and they expressed a strong interest in seeing some work come to their area too. So if we have bandwidth and capacity, we probably try to start that maybe sometime mid-fall and start it slowly, like we're doing in Charlotte, but get it up and running. That's the trick, is getting these things up and running.
Go ahead, Lynn.
In regards to that, Seth, are we going to be able to do any type of project work on Hubbard Dam? And I guess the other question I have is, do we own Hubbard Dam?
I bet the BI owns the facility, and the land around it is that Flathead Ridge Ranch, I believe. Yeah, and so, but that's, so I'm trying to, the Mill Creek thing is sort of spinning in my head and my head alone, but I have some sort of sense. There's the erosion cut that comes into it. I feel like it would be a great opportunity to employ people to restore that isn't heavy duty engineering and just gets younger folks out there replanting it and restoring it. It's construction at a level that we could accomplish with the tribal workforces. So as far as the ownership, that's a big challenge. The tribes don't own that. The landowner, the gate gets locked more and more. And I know Greg Wilson, it's just harder to get to. It's just kind of closing in, so to speak. Yeah. That's all I know about that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Seth, I was wondering about Camas Creek and Camas Prairie. Is there any look at it? I got a small diversion by basically my landlord for his one wheel line that is so erratic. He's got water going this way or that way so often. And I don't know if that's even part of what will be considered in the whole project.
We can't do those kind of projects until what they call the enforceability date, which is when the tribes can move off of the rehab and betterment of the irrigation project to other irrigation issues like fish screens on private ditches and things like that. We're locked into things related to the irrigation project now. Yeah.
And there is a small remaining cutthroat population
Cottonwood Creek maybe
in the headwaters there. Yeah.
Pretty beat up. Yeah. So we're going to proceed with final design on the North Fork Jocko. We were not looking for a decision, but more guidance, I would say. Yeah. Yep.
We strongly encourage you to go with your preference.
Thank you.
The Charlotte planning areas are additional meetings planned for that? I mean, what's the schedule?
Next week, we actually have the whole engineering team coming out in the field to work on that. I wouldn't anticipate another public meeting till this fall. You know, we're trying to adapt to the audience out there, you know, which is predominantly non-tribal, and but we're trying to get those irrigation return flows, you know, cut off so we get better water quality and fishing.
Did you get any volunteers to offer up their property for a end of the ditch pond?
I brought that up. We brought that up, and we didn't get any takers in the meeting. But you know, time will tell. Yeah.
Okay. Are either of you on the field trip for Saturday?
Casey's trying hard to rope me in. I'm trying hard to run. Yeah, there's one tomorrow afternoon too. Yeah.
Okay, just Casey's in charge of that. Okay.
Casey and Ryan.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
I filled out the paperwork, so.
Okay, you got your pass.
That's all I know.
You're not a terrorist. You passed. Okay.
We had to give face shots or head shots. Yeah. Yeah. We both, he and I were the last.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Seth or Craig before they leave? Seeing none. Thank you. Lawrence, you're up. Perfect timing. Lawrence gave us a heads up yesterday morning on this, so.
I missed that.
Council. Trying to see which one we have first. First one up is establishing the resolution on 11920, doing a blood quantum correction using the biological father's blood, which was not included at the time of birth. And the be it resolved accepts the DNA results and approves the blood degree correction for 11920 to increase it from 2764s to 159,256, which would be the correct blood degree, and also correcting the descendants of that individual. And also, if it does enroll individuals, then we will reimburse 1/2 the expenses to the person that purchased the DNA test. If you look at the DNA results, the results come back at 99.99, which is within the allowable limits that are set by the resolution of 99% or greater.
Any questions for Lawrence on this resolution to provide changes for enrollment 11920? Motion by Mike to approve the resolution establishing approval of the DNA results for 11920 to increase blood quantum using the biological father's blood quantum. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Ellie, to approve the resolution. Any further discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands.
Okay, the next one.
Unanimous?
Oh,
Go ahead, go ahead.
the next one is 9982. And it's correcting the blood quantum using the biological father's blood, who was not on the original birth certificate. The DNA results come back showing that the natural father, who was not on the birth certificate, with the blood degree as 99.99, which is above the 99% that is required by resolution. It'll change the blood degree from 19/128 to 51/128. And the results are that the DNA does show that this person is the biological father.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Ellie.
motion to approve the resolution approving the DNA results for 889982.
Motion by Ellie to approve the resolution for establishing approval of the DNA results for 889982. Second by Mike. Approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous?
Next is an avuncular DNA test, which show that in the avuncular testing is because the individual's biological father is deceased. And on an avuncular testing, we use the biological brother to that individual. And the DNA results come back showing that the uncle of the individual who was tested come back that the biological father, who was the brother, the results come back at 99.79 or 76. And by council resolution, they would accept an avuncular test result higher than 90%. And this is above 99.0. So this shows that the biological father who is now deceased would be the biological father to this child.
Any additional questions for Lawrence?
No, this is Jennifer. I make a motion to accept this test result.
Motion by Jennifer to approve the resolution establishing the approval of the DNA avuncular results for 880638 to increase blood quantum using the biological father's blood quantum. Second by Ellie to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous?
The next thing on the agenda is the amendments to the DNA testing policies and procedures, which would include the DNA certified collection agent. And we usually put that in there. And thanks for catching that. Because, you know, if the way it was is that a collection agent didn't have to be certified, and I'm glad you did catch that it should be a certified collection agent. For the council's information, I and Chastity did take the test, the training and the tests, and we are now certified as certified collection agents for LabCorp, as well as DHRD staff. So if we need to utilize DHRD, they do have certified collection agents there also. This DNA testing policy and collection agent samplers has been in the works for about 14 years now. And went through by the tribal attorneys. We went through a lot of remakes. And then the tribal attorney finally realized that we can condense it all the way down to a simple document. And because since we are going to be using the standard procedures set by the lab companies, that we didn't have to include those steps in the DNA collection policy itself. Therefore, the tribal attorneys condensed it quite a ways. The agreement with the lab company that we will be using, the contract is being reviewed by Contracts and Grants right now and should be in its final stages, so that we can get the lab company, and they furnish all the materials at no cost to the tribe. So that's one of the, they furnish the cameras, the sampling kits, the FedEx packets and all. So we do the collection, but there's a process that we use, and we have to follow that process specifically on how they want it, or else it becomes a tainted collection.
Thank you, Lawrence. I know I really appreciate the fact that it's going to be saving both the membership funding and tribal government funding also. And I love that you're going to be able to collaborate with DHRD also. Is there any other questions for Lawrence on the DNA testing policy procedures document? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the DNA testing policy and procedures. Motion by Jimmy. Second by Len. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous.
And
Thank
we,
you, Lawrence.
and we will send out notices because we do have approximately 30 people waiting for DNA testing. We will send them a letter stating that, you know, the price that's going to be charged to for the collection, which is going to be a lot less than going through the commercial collection process. And it'll make it more easy for them to come up with the needed funds to get the DNA. And one of the things that I also like to remind individuals that when a person does become eligible for enrollment through a DNA collection process, that we reimburse 1/2 the expense, which Tom was talking about. Instead of paying an individual back $250, we'll probably be only having to pay back maybe $40 per DNA test. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence. Okay, next we have Melinda. Come on up. Do one more and then we'll take a break.
So the first issue that I'm here this morning for is on page 46. And this one is for a project-specific agreement between the tribe and Montana Department of Transportation for some wildlife fencing and jump outs and approach treatments.
Question, Melinda, do you want
Mhm.
executive session for this?
No, this one will be,
Okay. so-
yeah, the
okay.
second issue, we're gonna do executive session. This one, we're gonna do open session because I
Thank you.
need your signature on this
Go ahead.
PSA. So this one is a project-specific agreement from MDT. They want to do some wildlife fencing in the St. Ignatius area. And the area that they're going to be doing this fencing is on page 50, showing the map there. So they're just going to be doing some new fencing, some new jump outs and approach treatments there that they see a need for. And so because of our MOU with them, all of the projects that they do on the reservation have to be on the PSA. So I'm here to get approval for this project for them.
Motion by Martin to approve the project-specific agreement between the tribes and the Montana Department of Transportation. Second by Mike. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous.
I need your signature, so I'm gonna come up.
Now we'll go into executive session.